Welcome back to our channel, everyone. Imagine lying sick in a hospital bed, waiting desperately for your own daughter who never comes. But instead, it's your daughter-in-law who shows unwavering love and support. In today's story, you'll hear how Suzanne, faced with betrayal from her biological daughter, makes a stunning decision on discharge day that sends shockwaves through her entire family. Trust me, you won't believe what she does next. Listen all the way through because the ending holds a powerful message that'll touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to support us and catch more unforgettable stories like this. Also, comment below, let us know your thoughts and where you're tuning in from. Now, let's dive in. I never imagined the person to twist the knife in my back would be my very own daughter. But there I was, lying on a cold hospital bed while she breezed past me as if I were a stranger on the sidewalk. Too busy, too important, too everything to care. It was my daughter-in-law, of all people, who showed up when I needed someone the most. That's the day I realized bloodlines mean far less than we'd like to believe. And if that sounds shocking, buckle up, because what happened next made it crystal clear that real family is defined not by birth, but by presence, empathy, and the willingness to stay when it's easier to walk away. My name is Suzanne, and I've lived in the Bay Area for most of my life. It's a city of bright lights, big dreams, and constant rush, reflective in many ways of my daughter Victoria's personality. Victoria built a life around the hustle. She's got a high-powered job, a dozen phone calls a day, and a stack of business cards that would fill a Rolodex. She's the type who thrives on deadlines and details, always turning to-do lists into battles to be won. So when I fell ill with a sudden sharp pain that turned out to be acute appendicitis, I hoped, but did not entirely expect, that she would drop everything and come running. In moments like that, you see who's truly in your corner. Instead, it was my daughter-in-law, Isadora, who rushed in like a steady tide, bringing calm and comfort. She guided the doctors, signed forms, alerted the nurses, and held my trembling hands through every injection. Isadora is quiet in her strength, a single mother to my granddaughter Fiona, the apple of my eye, and the widow of my only son, Adrian, gone too soon. She never complains. She works long shifts at a local caregiving startup, then comes home to manage school pickups and grocery runs. And now, somehow, she found room in her busy schedule to care for me every day, never once complaining about missed sleep or rearranged responsibilities. Meanwhile, Victoria was MIA. Too many client calls, too many meetings, too many business trips to spare a phone call or a hug. If you're reading this so far, leave a quick comment. Press 1 if this opening pulled you in, or 2 if you think it could be improved. Also, let me know where you're reading from. I love hearing from people around the world. I'd grown accustomed to living quietly after my husband Frank passed away years ago. Adrian and Victoria were already adults, forging their own paths. When Adrian married Isadora, I admit I didn't know her well at first. She seemed so self-contained, almost distant. But everything changed the day Adrian died in an accident I still can't bear to describe without choking up. Isadora didn't crumble, though. She pulled herself together, for Fiona's sake if nothing else, and kept living under my roof because I refused to let her face that storm alone. Over time, our bond deepened. We were never loud or demonstrative, but we relied on each other in practical, tender ways. As for Victoria, she had moved out long ago to chase corporate success. She married Tomas, an equally driven partner who seemed to vanish on cross-country flights every other week. Oh, they'd visit on holidays, Thanksgiving, sometimes Christmas, but their hearts seemed fixed on the next opportunity, the next expansion, the next rung of the ladder. So when my appendix decided to stage a rebellion, tearing through my abdomen like a rusty knife, I called Victoria first. You never fully lose that motherly reflex of reaching out to the child you raised. I clung to the hope that she might drop her work for a moment and race to my side. Instead, I got a half-hearted phone call from the middle of a meeting. "Mom, I can't talk. Business is on fire. Are you sure it's that bad?" Then a promise to wire money for any uncovered medical costs and a generic vow to visit as soon as possible. Days passed. She never arrived. So I rang Isadora. She showed up in less than an hour, breathless, eyes filled with worry. She stayed through my surgery, sleeping on a stiff hospital chair, ignoring the ache in her own back to make sure I was comfortable. It was the kind of unwavering presence that changes your perspective. As anesthesia faded and I opened my eyes to see her and Fiona huddled at my bedside, I realized I had underestimated the true meaning of family. Been reading for a while? Comment still here if you're following closely or drop a "need more details" if you'd like me to expand further. The evening sky hung low over the Bay Area like a soaked threadbare quilt, damp, heavy, and gray. I was just about to reheat some leftover risotto from the night before when a sudden stabbing pain shot through my lower right abdomen. It felt like a rusty screwdriver twisting straight into my gut. Deep, violent, unrelenting. The pain was blinding. It tore through me like something wild and ruthless thrashing around inside. Cold sweat soaked through my shirt in an instant. Beads of it rolled down my forehead as the kitchen around me blurred like a window fogged up with steam. I gripped the cold marble counter, trying to steady myself. Even breathing had become a struggle. In the aftermath of that stabbing pain, ambulance sirens became my soundtrack. I remember lying on the stretcher, head lolling to the side, catching brief glimpses of streetlights whipping by as we raced to the hospital, my eyes stung with sweat, tears, and fear all merged into one. The doctors diagnosed appendicitis so quickly it left me dizzy. If they didn't operate soon, the situation could turn life-threatening. They asked me who would sign the consent forms. I mumbled Victoria's name, but after multiple attempts, she finally answered only to say she couldn't leave work. She had that big deadline and a micromanaging boss to appease. "Just do the surgery," she said. "Use whatever meds. I'll pay for what insurance won't cover. Sorry, Mom." As soon as I hung up, my heart sank. Not because she couldn't come, but because she didn't really want to. Her promise of financial help was generous, but money couldn't hold my hand, brush the hair off my fevered forehead, or speak to the doctor about my allergies. So I called Isadora. The phone didn't finish ringing once before she picked up. Her voice quivered with concern. "Suzanne, are you okay? You don't sound right." I told her about the surgery. She didn't hesitate. "Text me the hospital address. I'll bring Fiona to a friend's place and be there as soon as I can." Within the hour, she sprinted into the ER, her cheeks flushed from running, hair frizzy from the damp night air, a small tear in her blouse from snagging it on some door frame in her haste. But she was there. She signed the paperwork, grilled the doctors about possible complications, then squeezed my hand as they prepared the IV. When they said they'd start anesthesia, she leaned close and whispered, "I'm right here, Suzanne. Don't be scared." And for the first time that day, I felt safe. My eyes slid shut in operating room brightness, but the last image I clung to was her anxious but determined face, a promise that I wasn't alone. Waking up in the recovery room felt like coming back from underwater. My head ached, my throat was dry, and my side felt like someone had kicked it with a steel-toed boot. But then I turned to the corner of the room and saw Isadora curled in an uncomfortable hospital chair, Fiona's little jacket draped over her shoulders as a makeshift blanket. One nurse told me she had barely left my side except to fetch ice chips or speak to the doctor about my condition. I tried to clear my throat, and Isadora jolted awake. "You're okay," she said softly. "You're going to be fine." The next few days blurred by in a haze of medication, doctor's checkups, and beep after beep of monitoring machines. During that entire time, Victoria and Tomas were ghosts. She called me once more, referencing some real estate deals that needed finalizing and how she felt guilty but just couldn't step away from it all. Tomas, for his part, sent a text with generic well wishes. But physically, tangibly, they were absent. Yet Isadora was always there, adjusting my pillows, untangling my IV line, and even bringing little Fiona to visit. Watching my granddaughter wave a homemade "Get Well Grandma" sign was a kind of gentle heartbreak. I shouldn't have had to rely on a child and an in-law when I had a biological daughter. But there we were. Real help can't be forced. It's given, willingly, or not at all. When I was finally well enough to be moved to a regular ward, I saw the relief flood Isadora's face. She spoke softly to the nurse. "Are you sure she's stable now?" The nurse nodded, praising her for keeping such a watchful eye on me. "She's been your rock," the nurse added, smiling in my direction. "Reminds me of how my own daughter stood by me when I had heart surgery." I managed a small, grateful grin. A whisper of gratitude stirred in my chest, one so strong it overshadowed the sting of Victoria's absence. That's when I started to think about all I possessed and who truly deserved it once I was gone. Still with me? Type 3 if you're enjoying the story and want more details, or 4 if there's a part you'd like me to clarify. The day the doctors finally said I could go home, Isadora practically organized a small parade in my honor. She brought fresh clothes, carefully packing my old hospital gown away. She made sure Fiona was there too, jumping around like a happy little frog, her braids flopping. "Grandma, you're free!" Fiona squealed. I can't describe how good that moment felt. Just to leave behind the disinfectant smells and the stiff sheets of that ward. As we exited the hospital, the sun felt brighter than I remembered. My house, waiting at the end of a short drive, never looked more comforting. But, ironically, that was also the day I made the biggest decision of my life. One that would send shockwaves through my family. I'm no fool. I had always known I'd have to write a will eventually. I'm a single mother, widowed, with a modest house in the outskirts of San Francisco that's worth a fair bit in this inflated real estate market. For years, I'd assumed everything would go to Victoria by default. She's my only living child. It felt like the natural conclusion. Yet how could I ignore Isadora's unwavering presence? How could I close my eyes to the fact that Victoria barely turned up at all? That morning, lying in the hospital bed with the discharge papers in hand, I turned to see Isadora helping the nurse gather my belongings. Fiona clutched a coloring book in her small arms, waving crayons happily. And in my heart, a question took shape. What if I made sure Isadora and Fiona never had to worry about housing again? I was old-fashioned enough to realize it might be scandalous. People would say, "But she's not even related by blood." Well, if that's the logic, how come she's the only one who cared? So I decided. Once I settled at home, I'd set up a trust. My house, my life's biggest asset, would go to Isadora and Fiona. It was an emotional decision, but also a rational one. Blood is one thing, the willingness to show up is another, and sometimes the latter is what real family looks like. When we arrived back at my house, large oak door, faded brick, and the same squeaky porch swing I'd had for decades, I got my first surprise. Victoria was waiting on the front steps. Her arms were crossed, her jaw set. As Isadora helped me from the car, I saw my daughter march forward, eyes blazing. I braced myself. It seemed she'd already learned of my decision. "Mom," she snapped, "I heard a rumor you're leaving the house to her." Her gaze flicked toward Isadora like a judgmental searchlight. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. "Victoria, I can't do this on the doorstep." I motioned for Isadora to take Fiona inside. "Let's talk in private." The moment the door closed, Victoria's words erupted in a furious storm. Are you insane? That's my inheritance. You said you'd never play favorites. Now you're giving everything to Adrian's widow? She's not even blood, Mom. I thought of all the nights I'd spent lying in that hospital room, hoping for a visit from her that never came. All the calls she'd left unanswered. All the times Isadora had stepped up in her place. Any sympathy I might have felt dissolved under the heat of my own rising anger. You have a funny way of showing up now that there's money involved, I said, my tone sharper than ever before. Where were you when I needed to be taken to the ER? When the doctor needed signatures? When I was alone and scared? Victoria flinched. She tried to counter with how her job is demanding, how she has responsibilities. But I'd heard it all before. Don't talk to me about responsibilities, I said. Isadora works full-time too, yet she managed to be there. She's raising a child without Adrian's help because he's gone. She never complained, not once. So maybe I feel she's more like a daughter to me than you are. Silence. Victoria's eyes gleamed with furious tears, but she didn't apologize. She just glared at me as if I'd betrayed her. Fine, she spat. Go ahead, see if I ever come around again. She spun on her heel and stormed off, leaving the echo of her threat in the space between us. If you're still tuned in, I'd love to know. Comment family drama if you relate to the tension in this chapter, or all good if your own family is drama-free. Inside, I found Isadora sitting on the couch with Fiona, flipping through a picture book. My granddaughter looked up, blinking in confusion. Why was Aunt Victoria so mad? Isadora pressed her lips thin and shook her head, as if to say, "We'll talk later." I appreciated the tact. Children absorb enough. They don't need adult bitterness clouding their innocent world. I sank into an armchair, exhaustion weighing me down more than any hospital procedure ever could. Isadora glanced at me, concern in her dark eyes. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she began. I never wanted to come between you and Victoria. She fiddled with the edge of the book, looking genuinely pained. If you want me out, just say so. I'd never fight you over a house. I swallowed, fighting a knot in my throat. You're not causing trouble, I said softly. You were the one who stayed. That means something to me, more than you could imagine. And yes, I'm setting up a trust, one that makes sure you and Fiona are secure. I hope you'll accept it. I'm not trying to buy your love. I just want to do the right thing. Her eyes welled up, and she reached over to squeeze my hand. Suzanne, you don't have to do that. I'd still be here for you, no matter what. This is your home. I've always seen it as yours. Adrian's memory is here too. She trailed off, words failing to capture the complexity of what we both felt. I nodded, tears threatening my own eyes. I know, but after seeing who truly shows up when life's at its darkest, I can't pretend it doesn't matter. You're the one who's been family to me. With that, I pressed her hand gently, and we shared a moment so raw it felt like a quiet vow. I sensed that we'd crossed a line from mother and daughter-in-law to something else, an unspoken alliance that didn't hinge on genetics or legal ties, but on loyalty and love. If Victoria chose to see this as betrayal, I couldn't help that. Not anymore. Over the next week, tension simmered. Victoria's calls were sporadic and frosty. She'd ring me with clipped tones, asking if I'd changed my mind. She tried playing the guilt card. Mom, you have a daughter. Don't you care if I become homeless someday? I reminded her that she and Tomas made 6 figures each, far from homeless. But the more I reasoned, the more she dug her heels in, accusing me of favoritism, of foolishness, of letting some outsider come between us. What she didn't see, and perhaps refused to see, was that I had already spent decades centering her needs. When she launched her career, I helped with rent. When she decided to travel abroad, I sold precious items to fund her. I gave without hesitation. And in the back of my mind, I guess I assumed she'd eventually return the care. But life doesn't work like that. Love isn't transactional. People either show up or they don't. Meanwhile, Isadora never asked for updates on the trust, never inquired about documents. She was too busy looking after me, ferrying me to follow-up appointments, making sure I took my medication on time. Fiona would tag along, brightening those grim medical halls with her giggles. She'd paint pictures of me, her Grandma S., with a giant Band-Aid on my tummy like a superhero wound. We'd all laugh, and for a few moments, the hospital smell receded to the background of my mind. One late afternoon, I found Isadora in the backyard, sitting on the old bench under the willow tree. She had a letter in her hand, an older one from Adrian. I recognized the handwriting on the envelope. As the sun filtered through the branches, she turned to me with a sad smile. I reread Adrian's letter sometimes, just to hear his voice in my head. He always said you were kinder than you let people see. He said you took care of everything after your husband died, never once complaining about the load. I sat down beside her, listening to the cicadas hum in the gentle breeze. My eyes flitted to the letter, remembering my son's gentle heart. I wondered if he had foreseen how different his wife and sister would become. Maybe he knew that, after all the dust settled, Isadora was the one who'd hold us together. 2 days later, I visited an old friend of mine, Janet Sanchez, a retired attorney who specialized in estate planning. She invited me into her cozy home office, walls lined with law books and framed photographs of her grandchildren. We brewed green tea and sat across from each other, papers spread between us. "So, you've made your choice?" she asked gently. I nodded, inhaling the calming fragrance of the tea. "Yes, the house goes into a living trust. Isadora and Fiona are the primary beneficiaries, but I'll keep a share aside for Victoria, too. I don't want to disown my daughter. I just need to make sure Isadora and Fiona won't be left hanging if anything happens to me." Janet studied me over the rim of her teacup. "You sound certain but also conflicted." I sighed. "I love Victoria. I always will. But I also need her to see that love isn't something you withdraw until an inheritance is on the line. She needs to learn that ignoring someone for years has consequences." Janet nodded sympathetically. "Blood ties don't automatically mean devotion, and if anyone tries to contest it," she shrugged, leaning back, "you're fully competent. You can designate beneficiaries as you please. The only question is whether you can handle the emotional fallout." I paused, pictures of Victoria's furious face flooding my mind. "I don't want a war," I said softly. "I just want her to understand why this is happening." Janet gave me a small smile. "Sometimes drawing a boundary is the only way to teach someone to value what they've neglected." So I signed the paperwork, a knot in my stomach loosening with each stroke of the pen. By the time we finished, I felt oddly at peace, as though placing my signature on that dotted line was the final act of a long overdue clarity. I was acknowledging what had been true all along. The ones who love you through your darkest moments deserve more than a casual thanks. They deserve to be recognized in a way that lasts, a way that says, "I see you. I appreciate you. You matter." What do you think of this turn of events? Comment trust issues if you find this arrangement risky, or right choice if you think it's perfect. I returned home to find a voice message from Victoria. "We need to talk. You're not thinking straight. I'm coming over." The calm sense of resolution I'd felt in Janet's office fizzled into tension. Sure enough, an hour later, Victoria arrived, expression set like stone. She barely said hello, launching into a measured, almost corporate tone. "Mom, I've spoken to some colleagues, and they think you might be acting under undue influence. If necessary, I'll request a full medical evaluation to prove you're not in the right state of mind." My heart twisted. This was my daughter speaking to me like I was a client needing intimidation tactics. Undue influence? I repeated. From who, Isadora? Victoria's silence said it all. She's not influencing me, I said quietly, anger rising in my chest. She's just there doing everything a loving family member would do. You, on the other hand, keep showing up only when the word inheritance comes up. Victoria winced, a flicker of guilt passing over her face, but she didn't back down. You don't understand the ramifications. If you sign everything over to her, how am I protected? How do you know she won't throw you out when you get older? Or sell this place and leave you broke? I stared at her, stunned. Is that what you think of Isadora? The woman who practically saved my life, who's never once asked for a dime, who stood by me when everyone else vanished? I set my jaw. Get this straight. I've made my choice. You have your life. Let me have mine. She inhaled sharply, tears threatening to spill. Don't do this, Mom. You'll regret it. With that, she spun around and stormed out, leaving me shaking. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but hearing my own child threaten legal measures was a punch to the gut. A deep ache settled in my chest. Yet, ironically, I also felt certain. I'd rather be threatened for doing the right thing than roll over and let unconditional love go unrecognized. That evening, I found myself scrolling through old photo albums, each capturing a moment in time where Victoria smiled at me with unguarded warmth. First day of kindergarten, her high school graduation, the day she got her first job. In those snapshots, she looked so proud to have me by her side. Where did that girl go? The one who looked at me with gratitude and affection? I ran a trembling hand over a picture of Adrian's wedding, the day Isadora entered our lives. Adrian wore a goofy grin, and Isadora looked down shyly at her bouquet. You could sense the love that emanated from them, like a gentle promise. I never realized how that promise would outlast Adrian himself, that Isadora would continue to honor our family long after he was gone. The phone buzzed. A text from Tomas. Hey, Suzanne, just checking in. I know Victoria's upset. Could you maybe reconsider for the sake of peace? I sighed. Even Tomas, who rarely had time to be involved, was stepping in. I typed back, I'm not changing anything. If Victoria wants to visit me to talk calmly, my door is open. But I won't be bullied. I hit send, half expecting an immediate backlash. Instead, no reply. Outside, the moon was high, casting a silver glow over the back patio. I could see Isadora through the kitchen window, methodically drying the dinner plates. She'd insisted on cooking tonight, a simple chicken stew that smelled like home and comfort. Fiona darted around her feet, pointing at a drawing of a rainbow and a house. My heart clenched with a sudden wave of tenderness. This was our household now, me, Isadora, and Fiona. We'd built a stable routine of shared chores, shared laughter, and quiet evenings. We weren't perfect, but we were there for each other. If Victoria saw that as betrayal, maybe the problem wasn't the trust or the will. Maybe the problem was that she'd forgotten how to be part of us. Are we hitting some emotional chords for you? Press 5 if you feel the tension, or 6 if you're curious how this will resolve. A week later, as if orchestrated by fate, a crisis snapped into place that forced us all to confront where we stood. Fiona went missing. She was supposed to walk home from her elementary school, just a few blocks away. Normally, Isadora or I would pick her up, but that day, our wires got crossed. I thought Isadora had it handled. She thought I'd already left. By the time I realized Fiona wasn't with either of us, a sickening panic set in. Isadora tore out of the house, her eyes wild. "Check around the neighborhood," she shouted, jumping into her car. I froze for a second, pain shooting through my lower abdomen as the old surgery scar twinged. But fear for my granddaughter overtook everything else. I called Victoria. "Fiona's missing." "I don't know where she is," I stammered, voice shaking. There was a pause, a brief intake of breath. "Mom, calm down," she said. Are there cameras around the school you can check? Her tone was clipped, almost annoyed. That's all I can suggest. I'm in the middle of a work dinner. Sorry. She hung up, leaving me with the hollow realization that she wasn't coming. I dialed the school, the local police, and half the neighbors. Then I tried to move, but the pain in my side flared. Desperation and guilt tangled inside me, each breath ragged. By the time Isadora found Fiona, lost in the next neighborhood over, night had fallen, streetlights casting a soft glow on the tear-streaked child. When they returned, I saw Isadora hugging Fiona so tight it was as if she might vanish again if loosened. Fiona clung to her mother's neck, sobbing. I took a wrong turn, Mommy. I got so scared. We all collapsed in relief, tears mixing with exhaustion. In that moment, my phone dinged. A text from Victoria. Did you find her yet? No exclamation points, no frantic calls, just a polite question. I slammed the phone down, too angry and hurt to reply. Isadora, still cradling Fiona, shot me a sympathetic look, but neither of us said a word. Action spoke louder than any explanation right then. That night, after Fiona had fallen asleep, still trembling from the ordeal, Isadora and I sat on the couch, the dim lamp making the living room feel like a small, safe cocoon. We were drained, physically and emotionally. I sipped lukewarm chamomile tea, but its usual soothing effect was nowhere to be found. Isadora kept her gaze on the floor. I told you, she murmured. I told you I'd never try to fight for this house if it meant tearing your family apart. I set my mug down, forced my stiff limbs to move closer, and put a hand on her arm. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but don't you dare blame yourself for Victoria's choices. She's the one who isn't showing up. My words caught in my throat. Isadora closed her eyes, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. I want Fiona to have a stable home, but not at the cost of destroying yours. Grief knotted in my chest. It's not you who's destroying it. We all see that. We fell into a quiet hush, the hum of the refrigerator and the soft whistle of wind outside the only sounds. After a while, I reached for my old documents again, the ones outlining the trust. I showed them to Isadora, not to force her hand, but to be transparent. Look, you're a co-beneficiary with Fiona. Victoria isn't excluded. She just doesn't get the entire estate. It's fair. Isadora hesitated, glancing over the neatly typed pages. I don't know how Victoria will handle this, but I can't fight anymore, Suzanne. If she wants the entire house, I'll sign away my share. I'll rent a small place. We'll manage. Her voice trembled. No, I said firmly, folding the papers back up. She can't win by threatening me with legal nonsense and emotional blackmail. I won't reward that behavior. And you? My voice softened as I looked her in the eyes. You have nothing to feel guilty about. You're the one who's been here, through thick and thin. If that's not enough for Victoria to understand, that's her burden to carry, not yours. If you're emotionally invested in Isadora's plight, comment heartstrings to show your support, or mixed feelings if you empathize with Victoria. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The following weekend, a surprising event shook the uneasy stalemate. Isadora planned a small bake sale to fundraise for her caregiving startup, Always There. They wanted to provide at-home services for seniors who lacked family support, essentially the very thing Isadora had been doing for me, but expanded to the community. She invited me to the bake sale, set in a church parking lot lined with tables offering cookies, brownies, and pies. Fiona was thrilled, helping put up balloons and hand out flyers. I didn't expect Victoria to appear, but partway through the morning, I caught a glimpse of her walking between rows of cars in the lot. She wore casual jeans and a sweater, looking almost uncertain, like she was stepping into unfamiliar territory. She waved tentatively in my direction, and I waved back. We didn't rush to each other with open arms, but neither did we ignore one another. She approached the always there table, scanning the brochures about in-home caregiving for the elderly and terminally ill. Isadora was busy chatting with an older couple about medication management, so Victoria simply listened. After a minute, she asked Isadora a few pointed questions, the kind you'd expect from someone with a business background. How are you funding this? Have you considered expansion? To my surprise, Isadora answered calmly, no hint of animosity. Victoria's gaze softened, if only a little. Later, while Fiona ran around with a new friend, Victoria and I stood side by side, nibbling on sugar cookies. I see what she's doing, Victoria said quietly, gesturing toward Isadora. She's actually helping a lot of people. I swallowed, heart pounding, unsure how to respond. Then she turned to me, her voice subdued. Mom, are we too far gone? Or is there a chance to figure this out? For a flicker of a moment, I saw the child in her again, unsure, looking for reassurance. I managed a small smile. That depends on how willing we all are to change. Nobody wants to push you away, but you have to be present. Nobody can do that for you. After the bake sale, Victoria lingered, helping fold up tables and pack leftover pastries. Tomas eventually showed up with a mild grin, giving Isadora a friendly nod. The atmosphere was cautious but civil. Part of me felt an unspoken relief, like we were all trying, in our separate ways, to meet in the middle. When we got home, Fiona hopped out of the car, spotted an early blooming rose in the garden, and insisted on presenting it to Aunt Victoria. The simple gesture seemed to move Victoria more than she let on. She patted Fiona's head and said, "Thank you, sweetheart." Inside, Isadora excused herself to start dinner, but Victoria surprised me by offering to help. I could see them in the kitchen from where I sat. Two women who had come into my life in radically different ways, now cautiously sharing the same space. Isadora carefully explained her recipe. Victoria listened, occasionally asking questions with genuine curiosity. It was a small but meaningful step. Then, as if the universe decided we needed a crash course in cooperation, a pot started boiling over on the stove. Steam erupted, hissing and spitting. Victoria jumped back with a yelp, but Isadora swooped in with an oven mitt, turned off the heat, and slid the pot aside in one swift motion. "Crisis averted," she said with a half smile. They exchanged a look, amused, maybe even a bit of camaraderie. Sometimes, little accidents bring people closer than 100 polite conversations ever could. We ate dinner together around the worn wooden table, tension slipping away with each bite of the still delicious meal. Fiona recounted her day. Tomas added jokes about his travel mishaps, and Victoria offered short but sincere compliments on the food. It felt almost normal, like a glimpse of the family we could be. By the time the plates were cleared, the sun had set, leaving a warm glow in the living room lamps. Before they left, Victoria hovered by the door, turning to me. "Look, Mom, I'll call you soon, okay?" She said it quietly, but it felt like a promise. I nodded, trying not to let hope blaze too brightly, too quickly. A single dinner doesn't heal all wounds, but it can plant a seed. Over the next few weeks, Victoria made good on her promise. She started calling on Sunday evenings, sometimes just to chat about mundane things, a new project at work, a funny story about a coworker. She asked how my recovery was going, whether the pain in my abdomen had fully subsided. She even asked how Isadora's startup was progressing. Each conversation ended with a slightly awkward but genuine, "I love you, Mom," as though she was relearning the words, "I won't lie." I felt a mixture of relief and guardedness. Victoria's shift in attitude was remarkable, but a cynical voice in my head whispered, "Is this just about the trust?" Regardless, I tried to welcome her warmth without overthinking. Sometimes the path to rebuilding a relationship starts with small steps, even if they come later than they should. Meanwhile, I continued my usual routines with Isadora and Fiona: doctor checkups, grocery runs, the occasional family movie night with popcorn. Fiona was blossoming in her art classes, bringing home pastel sketches of sunsets and animals. One day, she handed me a drawing of our house surrounded by hearts, with each person labeled Grandma S, Mommy, me, and Aunt V. I blinked back tears, touched by the child's innocent faith that we all belonged together. One Saturday morning, as I was watering the geraniums on the porch, Victoria pulled up in her car, got out, and actually offered to help. We ended up potting some new plants side by side, chatting about trivial things: how the potting soil seemed extra dry, how the weather was pleasant for an early spring. But beneath the small talk, I sensed a fragile bridge forming between us. Half an hour later, Isadora came out with iced tea and sandwiches on a tray. "Thanks," Victoria said, smiling a bit sheepishly. They locked eyes, an entire conversation passing in a silent second. Then Isadora said in her calm, level tone, "Would you like to stay for lunch? Fiona's out with her friend, but we've got plenty of sandwiches." Victoria hesitated, her old defensive posture flickering, then nodded. "Sure. Small steps indeed. Let me know your thoughts. Type steady healing if you sense things are improving, or lingering doubt if you suspect trouble ahead." Over lunch, the conversation drifted to the future. I mentioned I had been thinking about updating the living room, maybe splurging on a new couch or a recliner that wouldn't aggravate my back. Victoria surprised me by saying, "Let me know if you need help picking one out. I can drive you to some furniture stores, or we can do an online browse together." The offer was simple, but in the context of our rocky relationship, it felt like a peace treaty. Isadora, sipping her tea, listened without interrupting. She had that patient composure, the same one she probably used when caring for patients or training new caregivers. Finally, Victoria gathered the courage to bring up the elephant in the room. "Mom, I get that you set up a trust. I just, I want to make sure you're not punishing me. I know I dropped the ball many times. I regret it." Her voice quavered slightly, which was more vulnerability than I'd ever seen her show. Part of me softened. "I'm not punishing you," I said gently. "But I'm also not going to pretend the past never happened. You were absent. Isadora was present. That matters." A heavy pause ensued. Then I added, "I've made my decisions, but that doesn't exclude you from this family. The trust includes you, just not as the sole beneficiary." I saw her swallow, acceptance and a hint of sadness colliding. Isadora discreetly excused herself to check something in the kitchen, giving mother and daughter room to talk. Victoria leaned closer, her voice low. I spoke with my therapist. She said I tend to push people away to avoid dealing with, well, vulnerability. I guess that's what I did to you, especially after Adrian died. It reminded me how fragile life is, and I threw myself into work. I'm sorry." For the first time in ages, I believed her apology was real. "It hurt," I admitted, tears burning the corners of my eyes. "But an apology and changed behavior can fix a lot. Just don't vanish on me again, okay?" Victoria exhaled, eyes shining. "I won't," she whispered. In that moment, the hush in the living room felt like a quiet turning point. In the days that followed, the house brimmed with a cautious optimism. Victoria visited on weekends, sometimes with Thomas. Fiona eagerly showed them her drawings, tugging them into her play world, where everyone got along. Isadora continued her unwavering routine, cooking, cleaning, running her caregiving platform, even accepting small offers of help from Victoria. The two women found a tentative rhythm in the kitchen, a place that once symbolized the line between blood daughter and in-law. Now they shared recipes, traded small talk about groceries, occasionally laughing together over comedic mistakes like a burned batch of cookies. Meanwhile, the final trust documents were processed. My friend Janet sent confirmation, and I locked the papers in my safe deposit box at the bank. Officially, the house belonged to me during my lifetime, but upon my passing, it would transfer to Isadora and Fiona, with a portion set aside for Victoria. I intentionally left it that way, coordinated but explicit. It wasn't about dividing love, it was about acknowledging who had truly stood by me. One quiet afternoon, Victoria helped me tidy the basement, sorting through old boxes we hadn't touched in decades. We stumbled on a dusty photo album from her childhood, pictures of her and Adrian building sandcastles on the beach. Tears welled in her eyes. I miss him, she confessed softly. I miss how simple it was back then. My heart clenched. I miss him too, I said. But you still have me and Isadora. We're not perfect, but we're here. She nodded, slowly flipping a page to reveal a photo of Adrian in a silly hat. In that moment, something like acceptance passed between us. Acceptance that he was gone, that life had changed, but maybe we could still find a way forward, together. About a month later, a final test of our newfound unity presented itself. One of Isadora's elderly clients, a gentleman named Mr. Remington, needed transportation to a specialized clinic in a different part of town. His own family was scattered, rarely visiting. Isadora asked if I could ride along for company, since the trip would take most of the day. I agreed, and oddly enough, Victoria offered to come too. She said she had some flexibility in her schedule and wanted to see what Isadora's caregiving life looked like. We spent the morning driving through city traffic, Mr. Remington dozing in the back seat. Occasionally, he'd rouse and talk about the fishing trips he used to take with his son, or how his wife used to pack the best lunches. Isadora listened with quiet compassion, while Victoria observed with thoughtful eyes. When we arrived at the clinic, we spent hours there, check-ins, blood tests, waiting rooms with scuffed linoleum floors. Isadora calmly led Mr. Remington from station to station, never losing patience. Victoria had planned to do some work on her phone, but I noticed she spent more time simply watching Isadora, watching how she guided Mr. Remington's steps, how she repeated instructions from the doctors in simpler language, how she remembered to give him water or adjust his sweater if he felt cold. It was care in action, no frills, no drama, just consistency and kindness. On the ride home, Mr. Remington thanked Isadora repeatedly, tears in his eyes, as though she were an angel sent to rescue him from loneliness. When we finally dropped him off, Victoria turned to Isadora and said, "That was really impressive. I never realized how much you do." Isadora, humble as ever, shrugged. It's just part of the job. We all need someone sometimes. Quiet settled over the car as we pulled away from Mr. Remington's modest house, but the silence no longer felt strained. It felt contemplative, as though Victoria was finally grasping the reality of what made me trust Isadora so fully. The simple act of showing up for people in need, again and again, without demanding anything in return. Summer arrived with a sweltering heat that made the days seem longer and lazier. One evening, after we'd finished a light dinner, Victoria suggested we all go out for ice cream, her treat. Fiona practically jumped out of her chair, squealing about mint chocolate chip and rainbow sprinkles. Isadora laughed, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her eyes shimmering with a happiness I hadn't seen in a long time. So off we went, piling into Victoria's car. The local ice cream parlor buzzed with families, the neon sign flickering overhead. Fiona got her usual sugar high, smearing sticky cream on her chin. Tomas was there too, chatting about his frequent flyer miles and how maybe they should plan a family trip someday. At first, I thought it was just idle chatter, but Victoria joined in, sounding genuinely interested. Maybe we can find a weekend that works for everyone, she said, surprising me with her inclusive tone. We sat at a round table, the swirl of melted ice cream in our cups, laughter floating above us like music. A memory tugged at me. Years ago, when Victoria was little and Adrian was still alive, we'd come to a similar ice cream shop, piling into a booth and giggling over the silliest things. For a moment, it was like a warm wave of nostalgia and healing combined, letting me relive an echo of the past while also savoring the present. Afterwards, as the sky deepened into twilight, we strolled outside, letting Fiona chase fireflies. In that hazy lavender dusk, Victoria cleared her throat and turned to Isadora. I haven't been good at showing gratitude, she said quietly, but I appreciate everything you've done for Mom and for this family. I see that now. Isadora's eyes widened. She searched Victoria's face as if unsure she'd heard correctly. Finally, she offered a gentle smile. That means a lot, really. At that moment, seeing the two women in the same frame, not as rivals, but as two people who both loved me in different ways, I felt a quiet sense of triumph. Maybe the seeds we'd planted were finally sprouting. One weekend morning, I found Victoria in my living room, quietly reading over the final trust documents I'd tucked away in a folder. She hadn't asked permission. I suspect curiosity got the better of her. When she saw me enter, she stiffened. "I'm sorry," she said, half guilty, half defiant. I wanted to understand the details. I moved closer, resting a hand on the folder. "Do you?" I asked. "Do you really understand why I set it up this way?" She let out a long sigh. "I think so. You felt abandoned, and Isadora, she was there when I wasn't. I get it now." A moment passed. I'm not mad anymore, just sad at how I acted. I lifted the corner of the folder, exposing the line that listed her as a co-trustee. "This isn't about cutting you off, Victoria. I want you to be part of this family, not just by name, but by choice. Isadora has proven she cares. You can too if you want. It's never been about shutting you out." She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. "I might have to re-earn that trust, but I'll try." She set the folder down gently. "Thank you for not locking me out entirely." A sense of closure washed over me. For so long, I'd carried resentment and heartbreak like a hidden weight. Now it was as though we were finally meeting each other as two adults, flaws and all, without the illusions of a perfect mother or a perfect daughter. Yes, the dynamic was forever altered by those hospital days, but if Victoria was truly willing to grow, I saw no reason to bar her from my life. After all, family does not come with a reset button. It comes with second chances, sometimes third or fourth. The question is whether we can meet those chances with sincerity. Is it ever too late for reconciliation? Let me know. Press 7 for "It's never too late," or 8 for "Sometimes damage is done." Summer drifted toward fall, and the city turned breezy, leaves swirling in little eddies by the curb. My health improved. I started taking morning walks, sometimes accompanied by Isadora, sometimes by Victoria. We chatted about everyday matters, grocery lists, local festivals. Though we still had prickly moments, we navigated them with more patience. Whenever tension threatened, I'd remind myself, they're both here, and that fact alone felt like a minor miracle. Meanwhile, Isadora's caregiving startup grew. She began interviewing part-time volunteers to expand the range of in-home services. Even Fiona got in on the act, drawing colorful flyers for her mom's cause. On more than one occasion, I spotted Victoria offering marketing tips, showing Isadora how to track engagement or polish the pitch for potential donors. Their collaboration was hesitant but real. Sometimes I'd catch them laughing over something they found online, and it filled me with a deep sense of gratitude. One chilly afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a courier with official documents, the final legally binding trust. It was done, sealed, and delivered. I'd never have to wonder if I'd left Isadora unprotected, never have to fear my granddaughter's future would be uprooted. It felt like an invisible burden lifted off my shoulders. I carefully filed everything away in my safe deposit box, heart calm. That night, we gathered for a family dinner at my table. Me, Isadora, Fiona, Victoria, and Tomas. Over steaming bowls of homemade soup, we talked about the simplest of things: Fiona's upcoming school recital, a new coffee shop that had opened, how the neighbor's dog wouldn't stop barking. It sounded trivial, but the harmony in our voices was anything but. At one point, Fiona looked around and asked, "Grandma S., are we all happy now?" We froze, exchanging quick glances. Then Victoria reached over and ruffled Fiona's hair. "Yeah, Squirt," she said, smiling gently. "I think we're doing okay." And in that instant, with the aroma of fresh bread and the hum of casual conversation, it felt like we had finally reached some semblance of peace. Maybe not perfect, but infinitely better than before. Months later, on the anniversary of Adrian's passing, I found Isadora in the backyard, lighting a small candle by the rose bush Adrian once planted. In the quiet hush of dusk, the flame danced in the soft breeze. I joined her, noticing tears glisten in her eyes. Without speaking, we both knelt by the rose bush, silent memories flooding back. Fiona eventually trotted over, leaning against her mother, and the three of us formed a huddle of remembrance. Moments later, Victoria appeared at the back door. She hovered, uncertain, then came over. She knelt down with us, tears in her own eyes. She placed a hand on Isadora's shoulder. "He loved you," Victoria said in a cracked whisper. "He used to say he felt lucky every day for finding you." Isadora's lip trembled, and she nodded. They exchanged a look of shared grief and affection, bound by the man they both loved in different ways, brother to one, husband to the other. After a few moments, Victoria cleared her throat. "I thought maybe we could all share a story about Adrian, something that reminds us of how he lived." A warm pang spread through my chest. It was such a simple gesture, yet it honored Adrian more than a million formal gestures could. I began, telling a silly anecdote about Adrian trying to fix the old lawnmower with duct tape, only to have the engine sputter back to life and scare him halfway across the yard. Isadora offered a memory of him waking up early to make Fiona's baby formula, even though he'd come home late from work. Fiona just said she remembered him from pictures, how he always smiled when he held her. Victoria's story made me laugh. Adrian once gave her a gag gift of mismatched socks for her birthday, insisting they were lucky pairs. By the end, we were all sniffling, half laughing, half crying. The candle flickered in the dusk, and I realized we were bound not just by sorrow or by inheritance, but by the shared love for Adrian that had never truly left us. In that moment, everything the trust represented, my decision to stand by Isadora, felt undeniably right. We weren't the same family we used to be, but we were still a family. Let me know, 9 if you're feeling the warmth of these moments, or 10 if you're ready to see the final resolution. And that brings me to today, a day that feels both ordinary and extraordinary. I'm sitting in my favorite armchair by the window, watching Fiona color a new picture on the coffee table. Isadora is in the kitchen, finishing up some weekend baking. The scents of cinnamon and sugar drift through the house. Victoria and Tomas are set to arrive soon. We're doing a casual barbecue in the backyard. No big event, just a few steaks, grilled veggies, and a pitcher of fresh lemonade. But the significance lies in who will be around that table. I think back to the hospital bed where this all began. Weak, frightened, disillusioned, I realized my daughter had walked away at my hour of need while my daughter-in-law stood beside me. That day, I vowed to make a bold decision, to place my trust and my house in the hands of the person who had never left. That choice sparked months of conflict, tears, harsh words, and slow, steady healing. Now, I see it as the turning point that taught us all what it means to love beyond boundaries. If you ask me whether I regret it, the answer is a firm no. My daughter Victoria once abandoned me during illness, while my daughter-in-law Isadora stayed. On discharge day, I made a stunning decision that changed our lives. And if I had to do it all again, I would. Because this life, this precious time we have, is too short to spend waiting for people who never show up. It's also too short to deny the ones who genuinely care the security and gratitude they deserve. Is everything perfect now? Of course not. We're human. We still argue. We still clash on certain points. But at least we've realigned what family truly means. It's not about who has whose blood, it's about who has whose back. And as I sit here, hearing the front door open, listening to Victoria call, "We're here. Who's ready to eat?" and Fiona squeal in delight, I can't help but feel at peace. Because in the end, we have come full circle, together, imperfect, yet undeniably bound by something stronger than any legal document could ever define: genuine, everyday love. Thank you for staying with me on this journey. If you found it moving, comment 11. If you think there's still more to explore, comment 12. And feel free to share where you're reading from. I'd love to know. What a powerful journey we've just experienced together. Suzanne's story reminds us that family isn't about blood. It's about who truly stands by your side when life gets tough. I'm eager to know your thoughts. Did Suzanne make the right call? Comment below and tell us how you feel about her decision and what you would have done in her shoes. Also, let us know where you're listening from. We love connecting with viewers around the world. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support the channel and never miss another inspiring story. Until next time, take care and see you soon.